Captain Leonida Riva has served 30 years in the Special Forces. He went on 12 missions in high-risk areas and has seen far more than a majority of soldiers. Although he's living as a normal citizen now, he's struggling with flashbacks and suffers from psychological and physical disabilities. He lives separately from his ex-wife and 2 children. He visits his psychologist to ask for a larger dose of medication, so that he can relax while he attends his daughter Teresa's rugby game, and both his children come over for dinner. When she recommends therapy or confiding in his ex, he scoffs at her, sarcastically offering to tell his ex about 30 years military service during their daughter's rugby game. After the game, Leonida attempts to have a conversation with his son, Mattia, saying he didn't know that he was training his little sister in rugby. Mattia gives him nothing but attitude, and asks him to move aside so he can leave. A mysterious individual makes a small noise while Teresa is tying her shoe, and she notices them. As the brother and sister travel to their dad's house, strangers watch them from their car. Mattia takes Teresa to a diner instead of their father's house, and Teresa is bummed. When Leonida calls him, Mattia doesn't answer. He goes around the corner to join his friends in a smoke and conversation, taking the opportunity to complain about his dad. He suddenly gets a bad feeling and returns to where he left Teresa, finding nothing but spilled food and drink. The staff tell him they heard her screaming, and saw a jeep speed away. Mattia understandably freaks out and calls his father to tell him everything that just happened. Leonida and the police arrive at the diner, and it isn't long before a cop radios in to report that they've located the speeding jeep. The only problem is, it won't pull over. The cops can't keep up with it, and they request backup. Leonida doesn't waste any time, deciding to grab the radio and take off in his car, striking and knocking Officer Simonetti to the ground in the process. He follows the radio directions of the chase until the jeep drives past him, and he gets a good look at the driver before pulling an epic U-turn. The cop car flips, and the kidnapper's car stalls shortly after. He attempts to make a phone call when Leonida smashes the passenger window. The driver hits him hard enough to get him out of the car, and it starts moving again with Leonida clinging to it. When it whips around, it sends him flying, causing him to land hard on the ground, and he is too injured to give chase. However, the kidnapper's bag is lying on the ground and it contains his next clue. The police find nothing on traffic cameras, and Teresa's mother is informed that her daughter is missing. Officer Pepe points out that Captain Leonida Riva's last military mission went horribly wrong, resulting in his kidnapping and torture. Officer Simonetti wonders if he has any enemies, and points out that his reckless behavior has ruined any chance he had of working together with them. Leonida brings the small bit of drugs he found in the kidnapper's bag to a street worker, asking for more of it. The street worker returns with 2 men that say he looks like a cop. One holds him at knife point and refuses to heed Leonida's warning, so they are all quickly beaten to the ground. At knife point now, the street worker tells him the Mastiffs are the supplier of the drugs. Leonida pays a visit to the club where the Mastiffs frequent, and he catches a glimpse of the man in question. Before confronting him, he overhears a woman on the phone saying, "You were followed," as she exits the club. The officer speaks with Teresa's mom, asking if she's heard from Leonida or knows anyone that would have it out for him. She says no, but he gives her his phone number anyway. The kidnapper reunites with the woman from the club at a shipyard, handing her a bag full of money. Their victory is short-lived because Leonida appears right behind him and beats him. The guy manages to stab him with scissors, but Leonida grabs them and stabs him in the throat. He tries asking him who he sold his daughter to and who he works for, but he doesn't get any answers before the man dies. Leonida takes the man's broken cell phone and starts chasing the female accomplice, but she gets away because he can't keep running with his stabbed abdomen. Later, the Mastiffs arrive to find the jeep and their deceased man. Mattia visits the police station to ask if there's anything he can do to help, and he notices his father's record file. He is asked to leave while the police discuss updates in the case. They found the jeep abandoned at a scrapyard, and saw Riva's car on video surveillance at the shipyard. Officer Simonetti claims that he's interfering with their investigation. Leonida's ex-wife arrives home to find the front door wide open. She finds Leonida stitching up his stab wound and offers him bandages. Instead, she tries to dial the police. He appears behind her, and she begs him to go to the police because Mattia needs his father and she doesn't want him to die. He says it's worth it, if his daughter is safe. Mattia visits the police station again and accesses his father's record file while there is no one there. Officer Pepe and Officer Simonetti arrive at the Mastiff's hideout, pretending to be 2 stranded travelers. It does not end well, resulting in many deaths, including Officer Pepe. The police search the area and find a charred body alongside a baby tooth. Leonida brings the deceased kidnapper's broken phone to a veteran friend of his, and the man is able to pull up calls the phone made. Leonida calls the most recent phone number, connecting to a man and asking him for girls. The call is traced, and gives Leonida a general area to search. After speaking with his friend about their service, Leonida has a flashback to when he was trapped and had his fingernails pulled off, one by one before his rescue. His rescue resulted in the death of the entire squad. Despite his flashbacks, Leonida has no trouble finding and entering the hideout location from the phone call. It's a luxurious building, filled with bad men and whores. The woman from the club is tied to a chair and murdered by the man referred to as Mozart. He gets a phone call from Ivan, who wishes to buy Teresa. While she's being moved to another room, she spots her dad hiding in a doorway. She plays it cool, and says she has to go to the bathroom. When Leonida comes out, he's attacked. Teresa calls out to her dad as she's carried away. While he fights for her, he fights his way through several men, becoming extremely weak and worn by the time he wanders down a second staircase, only to receive one more blow to the head, and be thrown into a pool. His son watches an old video clip where his dad expresses his true feelings about being rescued. He says that sending a rescue squad for him was a waste of life, and if they didn't trust him to remain silent, they should have bombed the whole area. His son has a newfound respect and empathy for his father and what he endured. His ex-wife and the police are trying to get a hold of him, and can't. On the way to the hospital, defibrillators are used to restart Leonida's heart. While his ex-wife and son wait to see him, she explains to Mattia that Leonida was afraid of getting the help he needed, and left them once he became irritated and mentally disturbed, in an attempt to spare them misery, while visiting his handcuffed father. Leonida tells Mattia that he saw Teresa and knows she's okay. Mattia helps him escape the cuffs with a paperclip, and Leonida disarms the cop that enters the room, forcing him to radio in for a search on anyone by the nickname of Mozart. This gives Leonida his next lead, and Mattia volunteers to become his father's hostage so that he isn't shot on the way out of the hospital. His son comes with him when he hijacks a van. Once they're far enough away, he asks Mattia to tell the police where he's going, so that they can catch up. Mattia invites his dad to a game on Sunday to make sure he makes it out of this alive. Ivan, the buyer of Teresa, arrives to speak with Mozart, but they are interrupted by gunshots. Mozart shoots Leonida in the hand, and then the shoulder. He's pushing Leonida against a railing, but Leonida headbutts him and spins him around, throwing him off the balcony. Just after he reunites with his daughter, Ivan appears behind them, wielding a gun. Leonida begs him not to shoot and to let them go. But the gun goes off. Officer Simonetti shot Ivan, outside by the ambulance. The officer thanks Leonida for leading them to Mozart and the Mastiffs, because it'll help them solve a lot more cases. He pulls out a pair of handcuffs, but honors Leonida's request to let him take Teresa back to her mother first. While he serves time, he participates in therapy, and finally starts to feel joy again.